So let's imagine this. You're watching the 2021 Orioles lose maybe their 15th game in a row, and someone tells you, you know what? In June of 2024, Jahmai Jones is going to decide the ending of a huge Orioles-Yankees game with the division on the line. As an O's fan, you'd say that sounds pretty good. Well, it happened here in 2024, but not quite the way we would have expected. The Orioles with a crazy extra innings win over the Yankees. I'll recap it, plus get to all the Orioles injury and roster news from Wednesday coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, June 20th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap a wild one in the Bronx on Wednesday night. The Orioles coming out with a miraculous 7-6 win over the Yankees in 10 innings. I'll get you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including just a heck of a 10th inning, a very, very weird start from Cade Povich, and the Orioles crumbling a little bit late in this one, but able to hold on. Then we'll get to some of the unfortunate injury news we got from Mike Elias and the Orioles on Wednesday. Kyle Bradish, he's going to be done for a while. Danny Coulombe, he's going to be out for longer than we thought. We'll get to all of that, including updates on Jackson Holliday and Dean Kremer as well. And then finally, the Orioles made a roster move on Wednesday. Nick Maton is here. Kyle Stowers is not. Tell you why they did it, why it made sense, and why it really doesn't have much to do with Stowers' performance at all. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. So we start today with a wild win. Final score from Yankee Stadium in the Bronx on Wednesday night. The Orioles 7 and the New York Yankees 6, a final in 10 innings in game 2 of a 3-game set. Evens this series up at 1 game apiece. And the Orioles with the win in this one get to 48 and 25, and they get themselves back to within a game and a half behind the Yankees in the AL East. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from this crazy Orioles win over the Yanks. And the first thing you need to know is Cedric Mullins took over what was a wild, exciting, fantastic 10th inning at Yankee Stadium on Wednesday night. I got to tell you, what happened in that 10th inning, and yeah, a little bit of this is because the Orioles won the game, but just in general is why I personally, and I know some people don't like it, but I personally love the runner at second. I love the zombie runner rule. I love how much excitement it brings to every pitch of every single extra innings. You are on the edge of your seat for every pitch, different things happening. I mean, what an inning, right? Cedric Mullins starting to get the bat going a little bit, dumps an RBI single into center. Great read by Santander at second, by the way, as he scores to put the Orioles up 6-5, top 10. Then he steals third, and on an errant throw from Jose Trevino, gets into left field. Mullins gets up and scampers home to make it 7-5, basically completely taking over the 10th inning. And oh yeah, by the way, it came against Yankee closer Clay Holmes, who the Orioles got to for 2 runs on Tuesday night. And I said it on Wednesday's episode. I said the Orioles didn't get all 4. They still lost the game, but they showed themselves they can hit Holmes and also put a little pressure on him. And I said, maybe this will help the O's in the future in this series. Well, it did, because the O's came in with confidence against Holmes on Wednesday, and they hit him again, and they got 2 more runs on the board. And then in the bottom of the 10th, the Orioles are down to Dylan Tate in this spot, right? Santander makes a fantastic diving catch on a sac fly for the first out. Adley Rutschman, an absolute cannon down to second to get Oswaldo Cabrera stealing for the second out. And then, of course, what does it come down to with the tying run at first and 2 outs in the bottom of the 10th? Our old friend Jahmai Jones, it comes down to, and Dylan Tate strikes him out looking to end the game and give the Orioles the win. Just, I'm on the edge of my seat for every pitch. I love the zombie runner. I get it. Some people think it's not real baseball, it cheapens the game, whatever. I am a huge, huge fan. It just makes baseball way, way more exciting. And I think it's been a great thing for the game, and that was an awesome 10th inning on Wednesday night. Now, the second thing you need to know from that Oriole win is that the Orioles offense in general, especially in the first 9 innings as well, did a whole lot more at the plate in game 2 than they did in game 1. Now, the Orioles end up in this game picking up 7 runs with the victory on 11 hits. They also drew 3 walks and were hit by a pitch twice, which we will get to a little later in the show. But I thought it was a good performance. Ryan O'Hearn had 2 big RBI doubles, one in the first to kind of welcome back Garrett Cole. How about Gunnar Henderson, first batter of the game against Garrett Cole, who returned from that nerve issue that's kept him out all year. And Gunnar doubles, O'Hearn an RBI double later in the inning. O'Hearn also had a big RBI double in the 5th. You had Ramon Arias just kind of waiting out Garrett Cole. Cole was very clearly on a pitch count as he's still making his way back. They only had him throw 62 pitches in this game. I believe they only had him throw 1 rehab start before bringing him back to the majors. So the Orioles just kind of waited for Cole to get out of there. And then Arias jumps on Ron Marinaccio for a 2-run shot in the 5th to put the Orioles up 3-1. Big day for Arias at the plate, who had a couple of extra base hits in this game. And then, you have Mountcastle, you have Mateo, who each pick up 2 hits in this game. I mentioned Mullins. He had a 2-hit day. And the only Oriole who did not reach base in this game was Anthony Santander, who had an 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. But Santander almost blew this thing open in the 9th inning and made it not even a chance for the Orioles to get to extras. He was up there with the bases loaded and 2 down in the 9th, 3-2 pitch, smacks it to right center field. I thought it was off the bat a 3-run double with the Orioles up 5-4 at the time to extend their lead. And I mean, Alex Verdugo makes an outstanding running catch in center field to save that. And that was the only reason that every Oriole didn't reach base in this game. Just they had their struggles. Tuesday night, they pulled it together, looked much, much better offensively against a plethora of different pitchers on Wednesday. Now, the third thing that you need to know from Wednesday night is that the Orioles were gifted a run in this game. And had the Yankees not scored 1 in the 9th to send it to extras, it was the Orioles' 5th run and would have been the game-winning run in this one. And they were gifted a run because Gunnar Henderson was hit by a pitch in the 7th and later came around to score on a Mountcastle RBI double to put the O's up 5-1 at the time. And the reason I want to talk about an RBI double that makes it 5-1 is that Henderson was hit by the pitch. And we know kind of the brouhaha that came out of Tuesday. The Orioles, not intentional. Anybody with a brain knows that Keegan Aiken and Albert Suarez hitting batters on Tuesday night. Aaron Judge got hit, had to leave the game. X-rays were negative, but he was not available. He was out of the lineup on Wednesday, but it looks like he'll be fine and will avoid the injured list. And then eventually, I believe it was Gleyber Torres as well, got hit on the hands by a pitch from Keegan Aiken, again, in the spots that they came in the spots of the game, in the way the Orioles have handled themselves under Brandon Hyde. You knew those were not intentional, but of course, the embarrassment that is Michael Kay on the Yankees broadcast and some of the Yankees players kind of took it the other way. It is what it is. It's, you get hit on the hands, guys get injured that way. You have every right to be upset in the moment. But once you realize what's going on, if you're smart enough, they were not throwing at the Yankees. And then we get to that spot in the 7th. Orioles leading 4-1, 1 out, nobody on base, top of the 7th inning. Gunnar Henderson is up against the lefty Victor Gonzalez. And on the first pitch, Gonzalez drills him in the middle of the back with a fastball. Now, I don't know if it was intentional. I tend to still err on the side of it was not, because I think both these teams in a playoff race for first place and trying to get to a World Series are smarter than that, just to give up free base runners at all, let alone try to start something. But if there were a time, if the Yankees really were going to retaliate, that would have been, at least in the old school way, the time to do it, right? Where a base runner doesn't necessarily, quote unquote, hurt you there because you're already losing and there's nobody on base. And he drilled him square in the back. Now, Victor Gonzalez has had his command issues. He's not like a pinpoint accurate pitcher from the left side. Big stuff guy who sometimes doesn't know where it's going. And I'm willing to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But you lose a lot of that benefit of the doubt when the Yankees acted like they did after the game on Tuesday. All of this is silly. Kevin Brown just put it perfectly throughout multiple innings on the broadcast on Masson on Wednesday. All of it's silly. The unwritten rule stuff is silly. It's honestly, it's a loser mentality if you think you should go throwing baseballs at 95 miles an hour at people's heads to settle little petty disagreements. That's idiotic. It's completely idiotic. It has been not fully eradicated from the game, but they've taken a good chunk of this unwritten rules BS out of the game, which is fantastic. They need to get it all out of there. It's maybe the next generation of players. Maybe these Orioles will be the guys to do it. And that's the great thing here. Like, Gunnar Henderson took it, stared at the Orioles dugout, and just went to first base and ends up scoring what happened to be a huge 5th run in this game, which makes it a lot funnier if the Yankees really did hit him on purpose. Then Colton Cowser gets hit later in the game. He's upset that he got hit, but he doesn't really care after that. Orioles dugout doesn't react. Cowser goes to first. Because the Orioles are not toddlers, and they handle their business like adults, and they had their eyes set on the prize of winning a huge baseball game in New York in June and trying to win this division. They don't care about all this other stuff. Some of the Yankees can. It's whatever. Other teams can care about whatever these unwritten rules are. The Orioles don't care. That's not how they play the game. They play the game the right way, which is you don't get into fights where you're throwing objects that can injure people severely at their heads at 95 miles an hour because you got your feelings hurt. That's not what the Orioles do. They handle it the right way. Any Orioles fans who think the O's should have been throwing at Juan Soto, throwing at whomever over the past few nights, grow up. Any Yankees fans who were cheering when Gunnar Henderson got hit, grow up. That's where we're at in baseball. Deal with it. You don't throw things at people's heads. And that's that. The Orioles handled their business perfectly in that situation. I will say it was a little odd that Gabe Morales, the home plate umpire who had his own issues with the strike zone on Wednesday night, did not issue warnings to both teams after that hit by pitch. But because both teams after that handled themselves well, it did not get out of hand. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Wednesday is that Cade Povich had one of the weirder starts, not just of the Orioles season, but literally of all time in Major League Baseball. Povich making his third career start, up and down in his debut against the Blue Jays, awesome in 6 scoreless against the Braves last week in his second start. And then there's whatever the heck happened for him at Yankee Stadium on Wednesday night. 4 2/3 innings, 1 run, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, 5 walks on 94 pitches. Now, he wasn't fooling a lot of guys in terms of swing and miss stuff. Yankees batters swung at 39 Cade Povich pitches on Wednesday. They swung and missed on 4 of those 39. That's not very good for Mr. Cade Povich. But here's what happened. We got a combination of the first start and the second start here in start number 3. Early on, nibbling, not going at hitters. He walks 2 guys and loads the bases in the first. Luckily gets out with only a sac fly and 1 run scored. Walks 2 more batters in the second. Luckily gets out of it without allowing another run. And then he decides, maybe I should just attack, which is what he did against the Braves lineup for 6 innings. He trusted his stuff. He trusted the good cutter. It's not a great fastball, but he pinpoints it at the top of the zone and gets a lot of soft contact with it. And that's exactly what he did again. And all of a sudden, he cruised through the 3rd and the 4th. And if it were not for a 2-out walk in the 5th, he would have gotten through 5 innings as well, when it looked like he was going to struggle to get through 4 at one point early in that start because he was walking guys and the pitch count was up. But the reason this stat line was so weird is that hat tip to Jason Stark of The Athletic, who's always finding stats like this. This is the first time in Major League history that a starting pitcher, at least in the stats that we have, the reliable stats we have, probably in the modern era, I would think. First time, at least in the modern era, that a starting pitcher has put up this exact line. 4 2/3, 1 run, 1 hit, 1 strikeout, and 5 walks. You generally don't see 5 walks, 1 hit, 1 run. And that is what Povich did. So put him in the record books for that. I thought he finished strong. I still like what the stuff looked like. Just attack. Be more aggressive. He did it those last few innings, and look what the results are. He started stacking up zeros. He's going to get another start because Dean Kremer's not ready to come back yet. They don't have Kyle Bradish. He's in the 5-man rotation. So hopefully he can learn from it and look more like that Brave start the next time we see him throw. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 7-6 win over the Yankees in 10 innings on Wednesday night is that, don't get me wrong, it was a great win, but the Orioles tried to give this game away multiple times. They tried to do it in the 6th inning, leading 4-1. Runner on first with 2 outs. Cionel Perez comes in, walks back-to-back batters. The Yankees go to our old friend Jahmai Jones as a pinch hitter, and he flies out on the first pitch to leave the bases loaded. Exhale. Then you go to the 7th inning. Orioles now up 5-1. A dribbler up the middle, little miscommunication from Henderson and Mateo. It gets into center field for a base hit. Soto hits a little chopper in front of the mound. Perez doesn't field it cleanly. It's a base hit. All of a sudden, 2 little dribblers, and it's 1st and 2nd, no outs. They go to Cano, and he gives up a screaming 3-run homer to Giancarlo Stanton to make it 5-4. Side note, that's the 5th homer Cano has allowed this year. He only allowed 4 home runs all of last year. So a little bit more of a long ball problem this season. So then it's 5-4. And then, of course, in the 9th inning, Craig Kimbrell, who had gone 14 straight appearances without allowing an earned run. He had been really good lately, came out there with a chance to lock down the save, gave up the leadoff double. Stanton delivered with an RBI single to tie the game, and luckily he got out of it, keeping it 5-5. And listen, I mean, Dylan Tate wasn't anything close to perfect in the bottom of the 10th, closing that thing out. Like, the Orioles tried to give this thing away, They didn't, which is great, but they tried to, but they held on. And their bullpen, it's a little bit of a struggle right now. You need some guys to step up. Some guys didn't step up. Some guys like Brian Baker did step up. How about a 1-2-3 eighth in a 5-4 game at Yankee Stadium for Brian Baker? Like, let him bake again. And the Orioles found a way, somehow, some way, in this huge pivotal matchup at Yankee Stadium. They found a way to win it, even this series at 1 game apiece. But that was the great news from Wednesday for the Orioles. The bad news on the other end was Mike Elias talked to the media before the game and gave us some unfortunate injury updates on some Orioles players. And we will get to them all coming up right after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Here at Locked On Orioles, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for the O's, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. And you know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or you finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon and see the link in this episode description below. And this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Policygenius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of the unknowns. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It makes choosing the right policy for your family quick and easy. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams as well. And life insurance can be tough to talk about. It can be tough to work through your options, but Policygenius helps you easily compare all those options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks. And their award-winning agents can even walk you through the process step by step because it can be tough to think about it, talk about it. Policygenius makes it easier. So get peace of mind by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. So the Orioles found a way to win it over the Yankees on Wednesday night, and that was after getting some tough injury news before the game on Wednesday. And we'll start with the big one. Mike Elias spoke to the media before Wednesday's game in New York. The big piece of news was Kyle Bradish underwent Tommy John surgery earlier this week. I believe it was on either Tuesday or Wednesday. He had the surgery. Either way, it was successful Tommy John surgery. Now, the wording was a little odd, what Mike Elias talked about, but basically they had the term internal brace in there. Remember, that is the surgery that Tyler Wells got earlier this week. It's kind of a different way to do the UCL repair in there, and generally it's a shorter timeline. I saw some people were confused saying, oh, he got the internal brace. He'll be back sooner. Not really the case. He got a full Tommy John. And then the doctor, which has been done before, according to Mike Elias, the doctor also put in that internal brace, more of a physical thing that keeps things in place there to kind of give it more structural integrity, it seemed like, and help it work for longer, essentially. So Bradish is still on that 12 to 18 month timeline after getting the Tommy John surgery, which at worst puts him out for all of this year and all of next season. Of course, the hope is they get Kyle Bradish back at some point in the second half of the 2025 season. It's obviously a huge blow for the Orioles. If you want to hear more of my thoughts about losing Bradish and what the Orioles will do now with their rotation, go back, take a look at Tuesday's episode from this week. Kind of broke it all down back then when we had the news that Bradish had been put on the IL because he had sprained his UCL again. Now, the injury that may have hurt even more, just because we thought we'd have him for longer this year, is Danny Coulombe. Coulombe has been on the injured list for a couple of weeks now with some elbow inflammation. Well, it turns out he had bone spurs in his elbow, and he had them surgically removed this week. Now, when Coulombe first got injured, he did tell the media and basically said, hey, it's not the injury you think. So he was right. We were thinking Tommy John. It wasn't Tommy John, which is good. But this procedure apparently will still keep him out for a long time. And basically the language from the Orioles was, we hope he's back in September. What that tells me is there's still a good chance he pitches for the Orioles again at some point in 2024. But what it also tells me is we are not going to see Danny Coulombe for a while. And you could make a strong argument. I talked about it when Coulombe got injured. You can make a strong argument he has been the Orioles' best reliever here in 2024. He was one of their best relievers last year. He gets lefties, he gets righties, he's got just nasty stuff. They are going to miss him. And as long as he's healthy when he comes back, it's going to be a great addition to that bullpen in September and for the playoffs. That's going to be amazing. But just to get there, they're going to need more bullpen help. And you can't count on him coming back and being 100%. This, I think, even pushes the Orioles further to get not one, but I think even two relievers at the trade deadline. We'll talk more on that in future episodes. Also got some Dean Kremer news. He is going to make another rehab start. It seemed like that was going to happen. Only threw about 60 pitches on Sunday in his first rehab start in AAA Norfolk. He will start with the Tides up in Lehigh Valley at the AAA level on Saturday. We'll see how much the Orioles can build him up. If Saturday ends up being Kremer's final rehab start, he would then be eligible and available to pitch next Thursday at Camden Yards. That would kind of be the first time he'd be ready to come back. So we're still about a week away at least from getting Kremer back, but good news that he is progressing in the rehab. And finally, Elias did talk about Jordan Westburg, who left Tuesday's game after Juan Soto kind of barreled into him in a weird base running play in the first inning. Orioles referred to him as day-to-day with a hip issue after the game Tuesday. Elias said Wednesday that they are hopeful Jordan Westburg will avoid an IL stint. Right now, it seems like they're still trying him out, doing some testing. Because if you don't have to put him on the IL because, you think he's going to miss less than 10 days, Jordan Westburg is one of the Orioles' best players. You don't want him missing 10 days if he doesn't have to. That's why you're not putting him on the IL. That language from Elias was a little more harsh than Hyde saying he's day-to-day. That makes me feel like he could be out more than just like 2 days or something. But hopefully he does avoid the IL. He can come back maybe by the weekend. That would be the hope when the Orioles go to Houston. And hopefully they will get Jordan Westburg back soon. But we do know the Orioles, they didn't have Westburg Wednesday, although he was on the roster. He was not available. He was not in the lineup. And they're probably not going to have him for at least a couple more days before that hip starts to feel a little bit better. And because of that, they had to get another infielder here. And they had to make a roster move on Wednesday. Nick Maton is joining the Orioles for the first time. I tell you why that was the move and why it was Kyle Stowers who was sent to AAA to make room on the roster. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost you can get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist who helps you find new, on-trend favorites that will work for you. You just give your stylist your size, style, and budget preferences. You order a box when you want to, how you want to. There's no subscription required, and they just send 5 pieces right to you. You can pick the ones you like, send back the ones you don't. It is super, super easy. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to shop. It saves you time, saves you effort. It's all the good stuff right there. And the clothes, they make you feel good and they look good. It's style that makes you feel as good as you look. Now is the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Again, it's stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. So although Jordan Westburg, at least for now, is not headed to the IL with that hip issue, we do know the Orioles are not going to have him available for a few days. And because of that, the Orioles needed to call up an infielder, and they did that on Wednesday, promoting 27-year-old utility man Nick Maton to the big leagues and optioning Kyle Stowers down to AAA. Maton was not on the 40-man roster, which was full. So to make room, the Orioles transferred Tyler Wells to the 60-day injured list because we know he had his surgery this week. He's out for the year. And when you are on the 60-day injured list, you don't count towards the 40-man roster. So that opened up the spot for Maton. Now, Maton, again, utility guy, plays all around the infield and the outfield, kind of a contact-oriented left-handed hitter. He's got a great batter's eye, but not a huge amount of power, and he's had some spotty defense at different spots at times, but he has the ability, at least at a major league level, to play a lot of positions. Orioles brought in Maton on kind of a small waiver claim / trade this offseason from the Tigers. Then he didn't make the opening day roster. They waived him before opening day. He was not claimed, so he was outrighted to AAA Norfolk, but he has been in the big leagues before, spent parts of 2021 and 22 with the Philadelphia Phillies, was on their World Series roster in 2022, and then was traded to the Tigers and spent a good amount of time up with Detroit in 2023. Overall, 509 MLB plate appearances for Maton, just a 666 OPS. Hasn't been much of a hitter in his big league career. Now, with Jordan Westburg not on the IL, but the hip still bothering him, he's going to be out for a few days. I've said it. They're not going to have that infielder. What that means is you need another infielder here. And that is why Maton was called up, or just in general, they needed an infielder, because without Westburg available, you have 3 true infielders on the roster. You have Gunnar Henderson, Ramon Arias, and Jorge Mateo. Those 3 were the starters, third base, shortstop, second base on Wednesday night. But imagine if one of them gets hurt mid-game, or imagine if you have a spot where you really want to pinch hit for Arias or Mateo. If you don't bring up another infielder, you just can't do it because you have no one else, literally no one else on the bench who can play the infield. At the very least, you need somebody who can sit on that bench and come in just in case you need them. So you need an infielder, but with nobody going on the IL, you got to call somebody up, and that means you got to send someone down. And of course, it has to be an outfielder. You're not going to send down one of your 2 catchers, and you need the extra infielder so that that surplus comes from the outfield. Now, it wouldn't be Anthony Santander. We know that. It can't be. Austin Hayes has been hot. He brings you a right-handed hitting outfielder that the Orioles don't have elsewhere. And listen, I know some people want to see it. He's swinging it better. Cedric Mullins is just I don't even know if he can be optioned or not. It's kind of weird right on that borderline of service time, but they're not sending him down to AAA. So essentially, unfortunately, because of the injury and because of the spot they're in, but Westburg is not going on the IL, the Orioles were in a spot where they had to option either Colton Cowser or Kyle Stowers to AAA. Like, that was the only decision here. I saw a lot of people upset with the Kyle Stowers move, but given their performance this year so far, and given how much time they play, and given Cowser's ability to play center field, if given the choice to option either Cowser or Stowers, because you have to do one, the choice is Kyle Stowers, unfortunately, 10 times out of 10. And that is exactly what happened here. He's just playing less. He's a little more expendable for the roster for a couple of weeks, and he gets sent down. The move has absolutely nothing to do with Stowers' performance. He's been great when he's been at the plate. He's played defense well. He's hit the ball really hard. He's got a great barrel rate when he's up there. It has nothing to do with his performance. It is an unfortunate spot for the roster with the injury to Westburg, and Stowers just happened to be the odd man out. Again, nothing to do with Stowers. And you could say, oh, well, why would you not just put Westburg on the IL to make it easier? Well, say Westburg's only going to be out for 3 days. Why would you put him on the IL and lose him for 10 days? If you can get an extra week out of Jordan Westburg, you're going to take that every time. So that is kind of the spot they're in. So we know why they sent down Stowers. We know why they needed an infielder. So the next question is, okay, why was it Nick Maton? Like, the Orioles have all these amazing infield prospects. Why Nick Maton, kind of the journeyman veteran who the Orioles brought in? Well, there were basically 5 realistic options in AAA among infielders who the Orioles could have called up in theory to take this spot. Number 1 is Jackson Holliday. Well, he is currently on the AAA injured list with elbow inflammation. Now, Mike Elias did say he hopes in a couple of weeks that Holliday is back. But even if Holliday was healthy, this is a short-term call-up. Obviously, if Westburg's going to be okay in a few days, I don't think they're going to call up Holliday for just a few days and then send him back down to AAA. But he's on the IL, so it doesn't matter. Kobe Mayo is the next one. You could argue, hey, maybe this is his time. But Mayo just returned to Norfolk on Tuesday from the injured list. He had played a grand total of 1 game in AAA, and he'd only DH'd in that game since coming back. They're not going to push him back that soon after that broken rib injury. They're going to let him settle back in AAA before they get him ready potentially for the big leagues. So he was just not going to be an option as well. The next one is Terrin Vavra. He, got back to AAA from that really, really bad shoulder injury that kept him out for all of last year. He got back to AAA. He was hitting okay. He could have been an option, right? A guy who plays second base, can play third base, can play a little outfield. He's been in the bigs before with the Orioles. Unfortunately, Vavra went back on the injured list on June 7th. Not completely sure what the injury is, hoping it's not a re-injury of that shoulder. That would be not good for Terrin Vavra, but he's on the IL as well, so he is not an option. Your next guy is Connor Norby. I saw a lot of people say, well, Norby already came up once for one short stint for an infielder. Wouldn't this be a perfect spot for him to do it again? Well, unfortunately, he's not a good option for 2 reasons. Number 1 is he is technically not eligible to return to the big leagues at this point. When you are sent down, per the new CBA, you have to remain in AAA if you are a hitter for a minimum of 10 days before you can be recalled. The only way to get around that rule is if you are replacing someone who heads to the injured list, then they let you come back. But because Westberg wasn't going on the IL, Norby was optioned on June 11th, which means he can't come back to the big leagues on June 21st. The Orioles made this move on June 19th, so he was not eligible. Even if he was eligible, the Orioles need a guy who can be a bench infielder and need someone who has some versatility and can play multiple infield spots. A guy who, if someone gets injured, if they have a pinch hitter, can come in and play either second or third base if Mateo or Arias comes out. Connor Norby can play a little outfield, but he can only play second base when he's in the infield, and you need someone who can play third or at least two of those infield positions. Norby is not that. Nick Maton is. Maton is that fifth and final option. He can play second, short, third, left, and right field. Done them all at the big league level. And, he's not a prospect. You don't feel bad if he just kind of rides the bench the entire time. Maybe he'll play a little bit. Maybe he'll get a start here with Westberg unavailable. But here's what I predict to happen. If Westberg doesn't go on the IL, and let's say he misses 4 days, so I bet Maton maybe starts one of those games, maybe comes into another. Then Westberg comes back, and Maton just sits on the bench as an emergency option until the 10 days are up, the 10 days from Wednesday, so that would be June 29th. That's when Kyle Stowers would be eligible to come back to the big leagues. And then I think the Orioles just recall Stowers and DFA Maton on the 29th. If Westberg has to go on the injured list, then I could see the Orioles recalling Connor Norby at that point because he'd be eligible and kind of mixing and matching Mateo, Arias, Norby, and Maton until Westberg would come back. And then it would be interesting to see what they would do. But I would think when Westberg comes back, you probably you replace him with Stowers, and then you also most likely, you bring Stowers back as well. And then you probably would option Norby, DFA Maton in that spot too. It's a lot of moving parts, but this is the roster stuff that really intrigues me that I like to talk about. So that is why Nick Maton is the option. Now, how's Nick Maton been playing? That's the other thing. He's been hitting the ball really well in AAA, and that's kind of the other reason why he's here. 41 games, 168 plate appearances with Norfolk, hitting .294, 387 on base, 483 slugging. That's an .869 OPS with 7 homers, 13% walk rate is really, really good. 22% strikeout rate, not bad at all. Plus, in the month of June in AAA, 319 average, 959 OPS. His 40% hard hit rate in Norfolk this year, higher than he's ever posted in the big leagues. Been hitting fastballs well, been hitting sliders well, looking at least okay defensively at multiple different positions. He's hitting well. He fits the need they have for a bench versatile infielder. And if you ever need him to play the outfield, I don't think they would, but he can go out there as well. Just kind of for a short-term fix, which this will be. He won't be here long. This was by far the best option. And again, it had nothing to do with Stowers and his performance, just an unfortunate part of where he was on the roster. I'm pretty confident with the way Stowers has been swinging it when he's getting his chances. By July 1st, I think Kyle Stowers will be right back on this Orioles roster. It's just something they have to do to make sure nothing bad happens if another infielder does go down while Westberg is out. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. And of course, leave a rating and review wherever you listen as well. We've got another episode coming up tomorrow. It's a Friday pod. We are going to recap Game 3, the rubber match between the Orioles and the Yankees. Cole Irvin versus one of the AL Cy Young frontrunners in Luis Gil. He dominated the Orioles last time he faced him. He's dominating everybody this year. Should be a good pitching matchup for the series at 4:05 here on Thursday. I'll be back to break it all down. I'll get another installment on Bullpen Trust Rankings and get you ready for Orioles Astros this weekend. That's coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.